Live. What's up, guys? DJ, what's up, man? Good to see you on board. Few technical issues, as always. There's always technical issues whenever I try to go live. Lighting is atrocious as usual. Well, it works. Yeah, barely works. Yeah, all sorts of problems. Meant to go live Tuesday night. StreamYard just would not work for some reason. I don't know what was going on with StreamYard. Tried to go live. Camera working fine in the green room, I suppose what they call it. As soon as you go into the studio, it just froze. It did that for 24 hours, and then all of a sudden, everything's fine. But it's interesting because obviously, StreamYard it's like the go-to streaming service for people who are streaming, and I wouldn't like leave StreamYard completely, because obviously, if I'm going to appear on other people's live streams, I appear on like Piz's Patreon streams every month, and he uses StreamYard. Lorne uses StreamYard when he does his stuff. Sometimes I'm on there, so it's not a case of getting with the StreamYard completely. But when StreamYard was just like not working properly, I just thought I'll go have a little research into other streaming services, and Restream had a little go of that. I did a few practice runs, just private, and it's a really, really good sort of streaming service. I'm not sure in terms of like interactiveness with like other people, where how good it is. In terms of like a group getting together and streaming through Restream, but in terms of like just me using Restream just to put streams out there, for you guys in the chat, and that it's a lot more like, it's very smooth, and it's a lot more attractive looking. The website, they've spent a lot more time, working on the website, making it look appealing, and maybe that's all for nothing. Maybe StreamYard is still the king, but it just looks nicer. It's sexier than StreamYard. StreamYard is very, very basic and ugly. But that's what everyone uses, so that's what I use. But Restream certainly looks like something that could be quite appealing in the future, in terms of just if I'm just going to want to stream and just with nobody jumping on, and internet's dropped down, and there we go. That's yeah, StreamYard again. That could just be any service. I don't understand. My internet says I've got 1 bar, even though my Ethernet lead is plugged into the computer. So how is that even possible? Back, yeah. Okay, Lord. Cheers, man. Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand. How can my Ethernet lead be plugged into the computer, and why have I now got 3 bars? Why does it drop to 1 bar if the Ethernet lead is actually plugged into the computer? Okay, the computer's not the best. I am investing in a new laptop very soon, which is hopefully going to sort out a few problems. I mean, ideally, this would be in the bedroom with like a big desktop computer with two monitors, but that's my son's, and I can't use that. That's his, and his room is his room, and I'm left with a laptop, a 10-year-old laptop in the living room with some shitty light I've like installed, but it is what it is. So but yeah, that's basically what's been going on in my life this week. Not being able to get onto StreamYard. First world problems. Let me just copy the clipboard. I just want, yeah, I've got a few things to talk about. No lists. I've not got a random internet list this week. I usually like to cover. It's more just about. I try every week. I try to like cover a few points which have gained my interest to make it just a little bit different and not just like a random stream. And the first thing that sort of came to my attention, it didn't really come to my attention. It was more a case of just what I've become more aware of in terms of like trying to watch films. And obviously, I've been trying to get deep into the Giallo films in the last couple of weeks. It's an ongoing process. Obviously, Lorne's recommended a few. A couple of people in the chat from a couple of streams ago have recommended a few films, and YouTube show a few of these Giallo films for, just to stream. A few of the streaming services obviously like recommend, that they're streaming a few films, but this is the point I'm trying to make is the point I'm trying to get to is regard to streaming services, and if you want to go on a deep dive of a certain genre or just in anything, any film, any genre, anything, streaming services can only offer so much. And when it comes to obviously payments, people have only got so much money. I'm on a budget. I can't afford to just handing out $10. I'm not American. £10 a month, £8 a month, £7 a month, £12 a month to Netflix, to Amazon Prime, to Apple TV, to Shudder. Realistically, the normal average man on the street, woman on the street, gender neutral. No, that makes no sense. But yeah, trying to be, politically correct. Man, woman on the street. We can't be splashing out cash like that, left, right, and centre. It's impossible for someone like me on a budget. I can't be doing that shit. So the idea that like I can have a subscription with Netflix and Shudder, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, multiple others which I can't even think of right now, it's just not possible. So if I decide to go on a deep dive of like Giallo films, which I've been trying to do in the last couple of weeks, am I seriously gonna just like go Googling, right? Okay, I want to see. I watched Blood and Black Lace, amazing film, fantastic Giallo film. Never heard of this film before until a couple of weeks ago. Watched it, loved it. DJ, I think I said hello before, DJ, but hello again, and hello Lorne, although I said hello again. Yeah. So yeah, Blood and Black Lace. Watched the film, loved Blood and Black Lace. Such a good film. I might, if there's a good Blu-ray out there, very good chance I will partake in the purchase of that movie. Now, I wasn't aware who was streaming this film. I frankly don't care who's streaming this film. I wanted to see the film and I watched it illegally because obviously the internet is vast and I wanted to see the film and I watched the film. Now, some people may frown on that and say, well, that's breaking the law. Well, my response would be, nobody was streaming that film. The film is regarded as a classic of the genre. And if I love the film, I might go and buy it and be helpful in the increase of physical sales, physical media sales. Or I could just watch it on a streaming service and never see it again. Or watch it on a streaming service and know that it's on that streaming service and feel comfortable not partaking in the physical purchase of that film. But I couldn't find the film on a physical streaming service. So I did watch it illegally. And through that experience, I now want to go and buy that film. I want to go buy the film physically. I want to own that film physically because that film for me is a really, really, really solid film. Lorne says the hour release of Blood and Black is really solid. I appreciate that, Lorne. Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good film. Really, really, really enjoyable film. And the more I sort of venture into that sort of like 60s world of giallo and non-giallo, I'm gonna have to start to. I'm really gonna have to go into a deep dive of Hammer films as well, because I've become so jaded with modern films. The more I watch, the more jaded I become. Anthony, Anthony's in the chat. Yeah, and you know what, Anthony? Anthony, you could have been the person who recommended that film for me. It could have been you. You might remember, actually. I think in one of the recent streams I mentioned giallo films, and I think it was either you or I think maybe Sean, but I think it might have been you, actually. Yeah, but really, really, really good film. Really enjoyable. Oh, you did recommend it, yeah. Lawrence recommended All the Colours of the Night, which I have started to watch and then had to abandon due to I don't want to go into that. Christian's in the chat. What's up, man? Christian, I feel honoured. Christian's in the chat, man. What's up, man? Anyway, all good. I know you like your giallos as well, so you know. Yeah, Blood and Black Lace. If you've seen that film, let me know what you think. I think it's just that. I was going to say, I always had it. I think it's a modern classic. It came out in '64, I think, or '62. But yeah, I'm moving away from the original point. But basically, when it comes to streaming services, where do you think? Do you think we're at a tipping point where it's going to become? There's just going to be too many. Realistically, what is the most the average man and woman on the street can afford when it comes to streaming services? Because realistically, I can afford one, and if the film isn't on that streaming service, I'm just going to go and stream it illegally. I don't fucking care. Realistically, you know who? I'm just. Oh, Darren's in the chat as well. Darren, what's up, man? Give Barrett's the girl who knew too much 62 ago, and Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath is on the list. Black Sabbath is on the list. I'm ready to give that a watch. Yeah, cheers, Dan. But yeah, going back anyway. Yeah, so realistically, for me personally, on the sort of budget I'm on, which is like fuck all, I can afford one streaming service. I've got internet to pay for. I've got a music streaming service which I pay for, which I'll get into in a minute because it's important. It relates to this. You know, gas, electricity, water. You know, multitude of things to pay for. Food, clothing. I cannot afford multiple streaming services. I can't afford Apple TV. I can't afford Shudder, Amazon Prime, Netflix. If it's going to be one, they've got to offer me some damn fine fucking entertainment. At the minute, it's Netflix. Next month, it could be Amazon Prime. It just chops and changes. I can't afford all of them. And yeah, so, you know, spoiler alert, I just have to fucking illegally stream shit. But in the long run, the stuff I do illegally stream, if I really love that stuff that I'm streaming, you know, if it becomes an instant classic, like Blood and Black Laces to me, I'm going to fucking buy that physically. And I'll buy other shit physically as well, if that appeals to me. Shit that like I would never have seen without illegal stream, because some of this stuff I would never even be aware of without venturing, you know, into the internet. Christian says, I think maybe in a few years you'll see some dissolving of streaming services and Netflix may buy. Yeah, I think there's a possibility. At the minute with streaming services, there's so many, and realistically, are they just not all going to become some part of some big conglomerate? Because if you look, like, this is what I was going to say about. I've got one music streaming service which is called Deezer, which is like a French streaming service. They've got everything that Spotify have got, apart from Joe Rogan, obviously. They've got like everything that Apple Music have got, probably, apart from a few. There's going to be outliers in terms of these music streaming services. But if I get Spotify, or if I get Deezer, or if I get like Apple Music, if I type in the fucking Beatles or Metallica or Guns N' Roses, they're all on there. It's not as if I've got to pick and choose. It's like, oh, well, I can't have that streaming service because my favorite band's not on there. Yeah, if you're going to get really obscure, there's shit on these streaming services that is maybe not on others. But for the average music fan, and I do like some obscure stuff, but for the majority of the stuff that I'm into, it's on the service I use. And if it's not on there, I'll use SoundCloud. 99% of the stuff that I stream is on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. If you take a movie, certainly horror, maybe, if you cross-reference Shudder, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and a few of the others, you haven't got that 99% ratio. It's far more 50%. It doesn't even come close. You just can't do it. If you want to see everything you want to see in terms of movies, you're paying out big money. And he says, way too many streaming services now, and probably more to come. I hope not. I think it's just getting out of control now. Where am I to? I think I've read that one. Lauren says, just watching Evan Bother made. He was one of the best films to ever breathe near the camera. It's hard to disagree so far. And yeah, Steak says, you're Chinese. Okay. Thank you, Steak Sauce. Am I? Mike, I used to use Tubi. It's commercial short. But I don't know if Tubi is available in the UK, Christian. If Anthony or Darren will probably answer that for me. I'm not entirely sure. We do have IMDb TV, which is terrible service. I don't know if it's connected to VPN. Yeah. Anyway, enough. I've discussed enough about streaming services. Now I want to talk about a couple of film trailers that dropped in the last couple of days, notably Firestarter, the new Stephen King new interpretation of his novel or short story. I don't know what you guys think about it. Yeah, Darren says Tubi not in the UK. Yeah, I thought that. I thought I hadn't seen it, but yeah. So Firestarter, thoughts on Firestarter? I think the trailer looks horrendous. Personally, people, if you like the trailer, let me know. If you don't, Stephen King is like the cash cow now for like people who just want to make a quick buck, and Jason Blum is certainly in the front line for that. Jason, this is a Blumhouse production. The trailer just does nothing for me at all. I mean, Firestarter was never really it was always like a mid-tier King story. It was a mid-tier King remake horror story. I don't mind Firestarter. I think Drew Barrymore is fairly wooden in the film, and but I think the film is decent. But yeah, I don't really know why they've gone with. I think if it wasn't for Stephen King, would this be getting a remake now? I just couldn't see it. The trailer doesn't it's not promising in the slightest, in my opinion. I think it looks generic as hell. Zac Efron as the dad, really? I just don't see it. Um, Dan says the Firestar trailer is worse than Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that's saying something. You know what? I actually think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre trailer, I'm not expecting miracles, but it's better than this. This trailer was just, oh my God, so bad, so bad. I've got no, I mean, the thing is, well, is this film is streaming on Peacock the same day. So, in much the same way as Halloween Kills. Now, do they honestly think that Firestarter's got the same pull, the gravitas that Halloween Kills has got? Nobody is going to go to the cinema to watch this film if it's streaming on Peacock the same day, because realistically, who's waiting on a new Firestarter film? Halloween Kills, for all its detractors, and I was one of them to a point. I wasn't the biggest fan, but I still had a decent time with it. I was still looking forward to the film. I went to see Halloween Kills opening night. That tells you all you need to know. Thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. I don't know how many people went to see Halloween Kills opening night. There were a lot of people who went to see Halloween Kills opening night who decided to make a trip to the cinema, whether it be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 hours, doesn't matter. They decided to make the trip, spend money on a cinema ticket, on popcorn, on drinks, burritos, you name it. They wanted the experience of Halloween in the cinema again, even though it only occurred 3 years before. They wanted that experience. You can't tell me that's going to happen with Firestarter. You know, people are going to be making a 3-hour trip to the cinema or even a 3-minute trip to the cinema to see Firestarter if it's streaming on Peacock the same night, assuming you've got Peacock. And even if you haven't got Peacock, you'll be able to illegally download it the next day anyway, because it's gone on Peacock. So, I don't know. I think they got ideas above the station with that film. I really do. Surprise Firestarter is getting a re is not is getting Anthony says Surprise Firestarter is getting, I think it means is getting a remake, not much call for it really. Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's Stephen King, isn't it? Stephen King is just he's the cash cow of Jason Blum now, obviously, and numerous other streaming services. Now, I've got no issue with like regurgitating Stephen King stuff. It Chapter 1 was glorious. I love that film. I think it's so good. It Chapter 2 is fucking dog shit, but I've still got Chapter 1. Great. I never cared for Chapter. I never cared, even in the original film. I never cared for them as adults. And the fact that Chapter 2 as well, and the fact that the remake as well is set in the 80s, so it's kind of like resonates with me because like the 13 in 89, which is what I was in 89, so it resonates with me even more. But yeah, the Chapter 2, fuck that film. It was just jump scare after jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. It was dog shit. Which takes us on to the next trailer that I saw, which another trailer which leaves with no hope whatsoever, is Jurassic World Dominion. Which I wasn't going to cover this film. I wasn't really going to cover this because I was thinking, when I do a live stream, I think, what can I offer to like what we're going to talk about? Have I got anything to add to it? And I sat there and I thought, well, I'll watch the Jurassic World trailer. What can I offer? Because did want to talk about it. I did want to get your guys' opinions. And I watched the trailer and I was just left bored for one. Um, it just left me cold. Legacy, bringing back legacy characters is that saying legacy characters? I've fallen into that trap now of saying legacy characters. Who came up with that? Because it seems to become like a regular. It seems to become like the trope now to describe any film where they bring back old characters. They call them legacy characters, and I don't know why. It just it kind of annoys me slightly, but so they're bringing back Sam Neill and Laura Dern, and obviously they're keeping Chris Pratt, and is the one with the red hair still in it? I don't know, but it's just another case of it. Just feels like it's it's like somebody on life support. Jurassic World, the original, don't mean Jurassic Park. Jurassic World, the first Chris Pratt film. It felt new. It felt relatively exciting to a point. It felt a little bit fresh. It felt like it was offering something different. But this we're now into the third of these Jurassic World films. The second film was just too much of evil bad guys trying to, you know, trying to think of the right word, just not abuse, whatever. Take advantage of these, like, dinosaurs and for their own ends, and it was boring, it wasn't interesting. And now we're left with this new trailer, which where are they going to go? And I don't care. And that wasn't the point of bringing the film up. My point was I tried to. I don't want to just talk randomly about this fucking garbage trailer. I want to give my own take on why I think it doesn't work. And what I think doesn't work with Jurassic World, ever since maybe part 3, going back to the late 90s or the early 2000s. And okay, I know I've just defended Jurassic World, the first Chris Pratt film, because there was a delay between that and the third Jurassic Park movie, but it was something different. But what's never really changed, and what you're never ever gonna like recreate, is that feeling of wonderment from seeing the first Jurassic Park film in '93, which is something. And I hate to hark on about being old and being young back in the day and how it was great and all that shit, because obviously there's great stuff now, and it is great to be young now, and it's all relative. Obviously the shit that people have experienced now, that to me would be like completely nothing. But to be 16 going into a cinema in 1993 to see Jurassic Park and seeing like was a Brachiosaurus or a Brontosaurus walking along for the first time on a big screen, it was just mind-blowing moment. You can't really recreate that in future films, because the technology at the time was so advanced that we'd never seen anything like that. And also, I think what the point I'm trying to make is, in each subsequent film, going right through to the modern day, they've constantly tried to recreate the terror of a T-Rex on screen, even when they've made a new bigger, badder T-Rex, like they did in, I think it was Jurassic World 3. You're never going to recreate. You can't. The thing about the original Jurassic Park was, we'd never seen a T-Rex realistically on screen before until that film. They would always just they were badly CGI or bad, whatever the technique was back in the 60s or the 50s or the 40s even. T-Rexes was something that just lived in our imaginations, really. And in '93, Spielberg really brought it onto the big screen in a way we'd never thought possible. at that time. And anything after that, it's never going to have the same impact. It doesn't matter what. No dinosaur has the impact of a T-Rex in pop culture. Okay. Into the case in point, Jurassic Park 3. A couple of years prior to Jurassic Park 3, they discovered apparently in this fucking God knows where, some desert somewhere or wherever, they found this apparent, like, it was called a Spinosaurus Rex or a Gigantosaurus, some other fucking T-Rex type, but it was bigger than a T-Rex and it was more deadly than a T-Rex. You know, it killed more animals than a T-Rex. It was like, but nobody gave a shit. And when they released, so in Jurassic Park 3, I think it was, they introduced this new deadlier T-Rex, which wasn't a T-Rex, which was bigger and badder. Nobody cared. Nobody cared because nobody gave a shit what a fucking Spinosaurus Rex was. People only care about a T-Rex because a T-Rex has had 100 years of, like, however long it is, of living in the minds of people, in the imaginations of kids growing up. A T-Rex. A Spinosaurus Rex, we found this in 1988. We'll throw this in the next Jurassic Park film. They'll love it. People didn't give a fuck. And people didn't give a fuck as well because of the fucking shitty acting and the shitty fucking dialogue and the shitty fucking film. So, yeah, anything after Jurassic Park is average, to say the least. Jurassic World was a 3.5 out of 5 film. Everything after and before that, apart from the original, is similar or less. Jurassic Park 93 is a 5-star out of 5 film, in my opinion. Yeah, that's rant over. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah, sorry if you like some of the Jurassic Park films, which aren't Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. I just think they're shite. Let's see what Lorne's got to say, if I can find my cursor. I have more hope that's just than the new Texas Alaska. Ever the optimist, Lorne. Ever the optimist. Hope and scare quotes. So what was I going to talk about next? Yeah, I've pretty much covered all bases, apart from, I'll probably open the chat up in a minute. I'll probably send a link in a minute if anyone wants to jump on. But really, the last thing I wanted to cover really was why I've started to watch old movies far more than I have in the past, like, 10 years. And it's just anyone like me who, I mean, obviously I grew up in the 80s and 90s, that they're my decades as a kid. But as a kid growing up, I never appreciated the more serious elements of the 80s and the 70s, well, certainly the 70s. And even the 90s, as a kid, you're growing up in the 80s and 90s, you're watching these 80s films, you're watching these 90s films, but you're looking for, like, your cheap thrill, your buzz, your action films, and you're too young to appreciate anything a bit more deep. And as you get older, you start to, like, look more deeply into stuff that you like. But with me, because by this point I was, like, in my 20s, in, like, the 2000s, and then going into the 2010s, because I was so obsessed with watching horror films, I kind of just stayed on this gravy train of just watching new horror, slightly older horror, and never really going back into watching anything from, like, certainly the 70s, because I was just so entrenched in that mindset of 80s for me. I watch 80s films for me, action and me slasher films. And then I watch me 90s films for me, be Tarantino's and me late 90s slashers and me early 90s psychological horror films, and then the 2000s for this, that. And when I do take the time to watch an older film, which I'd never experienced as a kid, from like the late 70s or the early 70s, because I never ever ventured that far back growing older, because to me that was the era of like my parents. So it was just like, what's good? What can this offer me? So when I finally did do that, and on a serious level, which was only recently, because obviously occasionally I did watch a film from like the early 70s, like Chainsaw Massacre or Last House on the Left, but actually really going deep into like some of the early 70s and late 60s films, which I've still not even scratched the surface. But you know, they just offer so much more to me now as I'm getting older, because I'm just so sick and tired of modern movies. I'm so sick and tired of the modern tropes in every film. I'm just, the thing that really pisses me off about watching modern films. I'm so tired of just watching films where the the smartphone is like an escape route for everything. I just like watching old films where the plot was could be dictated by the technology. I mean, I just recently watched Thief by Michael Mann from '81 with James Caan, and I don't know how I've never seen that film before. But it's just there's little scenes where he's about to leave the bar and he gets a phone call and they call him back, and that entire plot device could have been turned on its head with a smartphone, but it wasn't, because he's about to leave the bar and he gets the phone call, but they phone the bar to contact him. If he 2 seconds later, he's gone, and that film could have gone off in a completely different direction. But with a smartphone, that would never happen, because everyone's always available all the time, constantly. And I just love that about older films, whereas phones are so important to movies, but in modern movies, they're like too important, if that makes sense. They're too important. They play too much of a they play too much of a part in the films. I'm not describing myself very well at all with this. The point I'm trying to make is older movies. I'm not really. I can't. Yeah, I'm really not describing myself very well. Basically, all the films are cool because, yeah. I'll just put an invite out, and if anyone wants to jump on, copies clipboard. There's the link. If anyone wants to jump on and give a better explanation as to why mobile phones or smartphones are ruining modern films, please do. I'm trying to explain. I'm really struggling with this one, because does anybody else think that like smartphones have like ruined modern films? I mean, they're certainly going to ruin horror films. Lorne says older films feel tactile and relatable. Newer stuff tends to feel emotional and over inspirational. I knew with Lorna put it better, far better than I possibly could. If Lorna, if you want to jump on, man, jump on, because it's been a while. Nice to talk. Because I'm pretty much like, I'm not, cover a couple more bases with what I'm going to talk about, but yeah, but I just feel like with smartphones now, it's like, I watched the film recently, See for Me, which I did a review on, and it's not a bad film. It's decent, but it's very much based on smartphone technology, and to the point where I need a few minutes. Okay, you jump. Yeah, I'll just leave it open, John. Lorne, sorry. See for Me is a film that uses smartphone technology to the extreme, in that you've got a blind girl who's in a house which she's cat sitting, basically, looking after a cat. guys break in to steal a safe, and she's basically using an app on a phone to shoot bad guys. It sounds way out there, but basically, the person on the other end of the phone who's sharing the app with her is telling her where to point the gun and where to shoot, and that's kind of where we are now with like modern technology. Modern technology. We're actually at a point where you can make a film where the protagonist has got somebody on the other end of their phone telling them which way to aim to shoot. I mean, I wasn't that big of a fan of the film, to be perfectly honest. I think it was a bit, the whole first person shooter Call of Duty gamer expert was kind of a bit forced, but it is what it is. But I mean, I don't know. This is just the way movies are going now, and I don't know. Just wondering, trying to go back through the chat. Is anybody excited for Jordan Peele's new movie Nope? Because I sure as hell am. I don't know how you guys feel about Jordan Peele. I think, yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it. I just think Get Out was great. Us was a flawed classic. I mean, Super Bowl Sunday is obviously it's Sunday. I'm aware that it's like the big sort of reveal for like a lot of trailers and like TV adverts over there. So I know Lord of the Rings is getting a trailer, but I know that Jordan Peele's movie is getting a trailer as well. But I'm looking forward to it. I think he's kind of like, Jordan Peele for me is like the new, and I don't mean this in a negative way. He's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan when he was still relevant, like in those first couple of years. I know M. Night Shyamalan's shite now. He just makes garbage films. But for the first like 2 or 3 films, I thought he was just like on fire. And I think Jordan Peele, for the first 2 films he's done, I just really, really, they really, really sit with me. I really, really like them. I just think this is, I just want to go with this film. I don't know if he's going to go with the whole, like everything. The first 2 films, they've obviously heavily based on race and Black America to a point. I don't know whether he's going to go that route again. I don't think he needs to really. I think he's covered. That pretty much now. And I don't really know whether that's even wise, considering like the shit that's gone on in America in the last couple of years. I think it's just like move away from that now. But yeah, I'm totally on board for this. In terms of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then whenever that's going to drop in a couple of. I'm watching Teeth. Is that the one where the girl's vagina bites off dicks? Because I've not seen it. I don't really want to see it. It is that. That's the film, isn't it? I remember when that came out. It was like 10 years ago. I just remember watching the reactions to it. It was like, oh God Almighty! What could be worse than that, man? Fucking hell! Jesus! A vagina that bites men's cocks off. 2007. Okay. I might have to check that out. Oh my God. Is Lawn? It's saying device is not connected, Lawn. Oh, there you are. There you are.
Hello.
It said, I got a bit confused because there was Japanese writing underneath, and I was like,
close Chinese, but bonus points for anyone out there who can tell me what that says.
I certainly can't.
Well, maybe in the future when your audience is transcontinental, someone will look back on the episode and get it.
How's it going, man?
It's going, man. I'm tired. It's cold. It was a warmer day here. Now it's really dropped down. You know, it's Jersey, so Jersey in February, it's going to be cold. This is part of the landscape we live with.
Yeah. It's probably similar. It's probably not dissimilar to what it's like in the UK, you know?
We get less rain than you. We're not really Seattle.
Yeah. It's pretty, it's 5 degrees here, so.
You got a little worse than I do. I think we're at like, I don't know, 30. So.
I think, am I talking in centigrade or Fahrenheit?
Oh, well, we only do Fahrenheit here in
Frozen. Has lawn frozen for everyone?
Now I feel
okay?
like
I can see you now. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. You just froze for a second.
All right. My screen didn't freeze at all there, so.
It could be my internet. I don't know. I mean, considering I've got like an Ethernet lead into the computer and still have issues, and the fact that I live in a city as well, I don't understand why I would have internet problems. But
your computer might be set to default to the wireless. You might want to just go into settings and see if you can just disable wireless to see what happens. Don't do it right now because that could be cataclysmic. But
yeah, I'll leave it for now, just in case. Don't want to like. I began to watch All the Colors of the Dark, and then I only got 5 minutes in, but obviously
that's not very far.
No. I was enjoying. The first 5 minutes, and it was a bit of a mind fuck at the beginning. It was like, what the hell's going on? But then Veil Whale chick got in the way, so I'm gonna have to come back to it. I did see Blood and Black Lace, which I loved. Oh, so good.
Yeah, Blood and Black Lace is really solid. See, the thing I've always loved about giallos in general, and I probably like giallos more than I like American slasher films, is that there's always a concrete through-line story. With all the other elements that make a giallo, there still is always a strong sense of a plot, as opposed to just, I guess, a story or, it's not just the 10 Little Indians thing, where it's like you set up characters and knock them down. There is always something more going on as well. And I think that leads to better rewatches. I really do. All the Colors of the Night is an amazing film. Sergio Martino absolutely is one of the most interesting visual filmmakers you ever see. If even you look at his later stuff after the Italian film industry had no money and he suffered like Argento and Fulci and everyone else did when the money went away, he still is always striving to put something interesting on screen. So I think you have a good road. I mean, I'm jealous you're experiencing this stuff all for the first time. That's amazing. I wish I could like erase them so I could re-experience them.
I think the thing with Blood and Black Lace is it's one of the things that, I mean, I'm assuming that the Invisible Man was before Blood and Black Lace. You've kind of like ripped off the Invisible Man because it's clearly it's clearly meant to be the Invisible Man with the mask. The Invisible Man came first, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's not. I'm not. It's not a knock on Blood and Black Lace. I'm just trying to get my timeline right. So.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of French art films that actually Bava was probably more directly ripping off. Eyes Without a Face would be a pretty good example. But Yeah, no, I think that's the other thing about Bava, because he was a continental filmmaker. He had so many influences, and I think you can see all of them. I've never particularly gotten The Invisible Man out of it, but now next time I watch it, I bet I will, because you pointed it out.
That's just what came to my mind. It's just,
Yeah,
I
no,
think,
that's really cool.
well, I mean, another thing that which is probably completely lost on you, which this is not something that it's ripped off. It's something that's influenced, but it's a massive worldwide hit. We have this show in the UK called Midsummer Murders.
I know what it is. I've never seen it.
No, it's basically it's shown worldwide, but it's a massive hit around the world, and it's a massive hit in the UK. But it's very much a small town. It's basically set in a collection of small villages, and every week, the detective investigates a series of murders, but the murders are always quite sort of surreal and a bit almost daft, like silly. Somebody will be crushed by like a block of cheese or something, by some like a masked assailant, and it's almost like that. Blood of Black Lace. It always feels like almost like quite innocent, and it's sort of like, okay. I mean, there are elements, certainly like the face burning scene, which is quite brutal for a '60s film, but it's almost like this sort of like playful innocence to the film, with that's due to the '60s set. And it's just in terms of like, it's hard to maybe because I'm just in relation to what I've seen. It's had a massive influence, I think, on Midsummer Murders, which I enjoy, which is obviously a '90s, 2000s TV show. And I don't know whether there's just Blood and Black Lace in particular, but it almost feels slightly like Agatha Christie-like in terms of like the whodunit element.
That can be very common to the giallo experience for you. Not necessarily the sense of innocence. That's pretty much just the early part of the giallo experience, because they eventually go completely the other way. They go towards as close to pornography as they can, more like art porn. But no, I think it's interesting though, because when you look at a film like Blood and Black Lace, what you're referring to, I think, is the complete lack of cynicism. Did you see Last Night in Soho?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a film set in the 60s that's attempting to evoke the vibe of the 60s. And in some ways, it does a really good job of pulling back the veneer of like the myth of the 60s, right? Yeah. Which I like. But how they present the 60s has a modern sensibility to it. And Edgar Wright basically uses a 2022 cynical worldview to build that 1960s, whereas Bava in the 60s had a completely different view of what was going on around him. Now you can say that hindsight is 2020, and maybe Bava was, only capturing a small cross section of what was going on, but both films kind of intersect, right? I mean, they're kind of in the same world, but yet the viewpoints on them could not be more dissimilar. So I think it's interesting. I think they'd make an interesting double feature.
Just certainly watching a couple, watching some of the Argento films, like the Animals trilogy, which I watched after Suspiria, and then obviously watching Blood and Black Lace and a couple of the other films. They just seem totally, I know that they all come under the giallo umbrella, but Suspiria just feels like a totally different beast to these films. And Inferno in the same way.
Suspiria is not a giallo. That's why.
Is it not? Is it not?
It is.
Okay. I just assumed. I always thought it was the most famous giallo film there was.
Yeah.
But I never. It feels different to the other.
It should. Giallos came about because in the post-war Italy there was cheap paperbacks that were marketed towards men, usually for 3 or 5 cents, the equivalent of a cent. They were very cheap, and they were published on the cheapest paper possible. They were not meant to survive. Some of them were reprints of older American crime novels, but there was a lot of new novels that we produced for that market, specifically for the working class literate male. So they tended to be very violent and very sexual. They usually had a lot of crime themes to them. They were about corrupt cops and prostitutes and murder plots and incestuous families. All these like sleazy subjects that pre-war you would never have seen published at all, but now post-war in Italy you were seeing them in droves. And basically with Bava's The Girl Who Knew Too Much, you start to see film adaptations of that mindset and those type of stories. And the big thing is, and it's not a hard fast rule, but it's close to hard fast rule. Traditionally, giallos were crime based. They were not supernatural based. So usually if you have a supernatural element, it's not going to qualify as a giallo. Now, when you get to the later stuff like Delirium and some of the Lamberto Bava stuff, and it does get a little bit more murky, but certainly in the traditional sense, a story about witches wouldn't qualify as a giallo. That's more of a like a modernization of the Hansel and Gretel thing.
Clearly, I think most people though, when they think, I think, you know, if you were to say not you, but the average man on the street who didn't know much about giallo films, if you said a giallo film, would it be wrong to say that a lot of people would just say Suspiria?
Oh, I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, it doesn't make it right. And I don't really care. I'll talk about Suspiria on whatever terms people want. I think that the movie pretty much changed the genre in many ways. I mean, people don't realize that Suspiria was playing as a midnight movie alongside Rocky Horror and all those great 70s midnight movies that were the bedrock of that experience in major cities for like decades. That movie stuck around because it was not available on any home format. Cable didn't want it because it was too bloody. So for years, the only way to see Suspiria was to go to a city and watch it on the screen. And it grew in popularity. At least this is the American perspective, but Britain might be completely different. But it was kind of a legendary film for a lot of people. When it finally came to VHS, we have an experience that's very common in the genre, which is things get blown out of proportion over years, and when you finally see them, you're kind of underwhelmed by them. Now, there's films that's not true of, like Cannibal Holocaust, for instance. Like Cannibal Holocaust lives up to its reputation, but a lot of films don't. Cannibal Apocalypse would be a film that, you know, constantly people will say, used to say, oh, you got to see this thing. It's so nasty. I mean, you actually see the film, you're like, it's kind of boring. But for years, you couldn't get a hold of it, so it had that reputation. Suspiria, when it came out, lived up to its reputation, and then some. It used to be called the first 12 minutes used to be called the most terrifying 12 minutes of film of all time. And I'm not going to necessarily argue that. I don't think the film itself is the scariest of all time, but that opening is amazing.
So, in terms of like Suspiria and Inferno, like what would they, what bracket would they fall under? I mean, it's because they don't really sort of like. It's hard to define. I mean, I always assumed they were giallo films. So if they're not giallo films, I'm not entirely sure what you would class them as, because they're just so. They're not. I wouldn't say Suspiria. I wouldn't class it as a slasher film. It's just so removed from the typical. And Inferno is just completely.
They're they're horror fairy tales is what they are. I mean, I just point blank, remove Hansel and Suspiria is Gretel goes to live with the witches. I mean, they're meant to be very broad. That's why they're so colorful. They're meant to evoke animated films. Except it's like, you know, brutal and nasty because they're meant for adults. But yeah, no, and it's funny. I'm a big defender of Inferno. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think that Inferno at times is more dreamlike than Suspiria, which is saying something. It's an inconsistent film. Mario Bava did work on the film. He did film the underwater sequence in the hotel. I think it's a film that I think is not ever gonna hit, I don't know, the mainstream popularity of Argento's bigger titles, but it probably deserves it. There's a lot of amazing stuff in that film. I think
Argento's got a new movie to be
it's
released. I've not seen the trailer, but I'm not holding out much.
so Lucy puts the football down and says, "Come on, Charlie Brown, kick it." Right? So how many times are we going to do this? We get our hopes up whenever one of these older masters is about to release another film, and we tend to be disappointed. So I hope it's great. The trailer was tightly cut together. That scares me a little bit, to be honest with you, because sometimes when you have an overly brief and overly stylized trailer, they're kind of hiding the movie. Later Argento has its moments, but I haven't seen a full film of Argento's that I've liked in a long, long time.
Anthony, I agree about The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Tenebrae, I still haven't seen, and I will be watching it at some point this week, because every time I always go to watch Tenebrae and then something sidetracks me and I go and watch something else, because I'm trying to sort of go back to the 60s and like make my way forward with a lot of these Italian directors. But Bird with the Crystal Plumage is just a stone cold classic. I saw the film last year for the first time. I was just blown away. And then
Did you watch it dubbed or subbed?
No, subtitled. Yeah,
That's the way to do it, because then
yeah.
Susie Kendall doesn't seem like a moron. Good. Yeah. That dub is. Ugh.
You were watching it earlier, and I think I made the point about streaming services and why there is a need to watch. I mean, I hold my hands up. When we watched, we did Duel, I Start Counting. You had to put a link out for us to watch it because some of these films you just cannot realistically get hold of unless you're going to physically buy them. And like I've always said, if I love a film that much, I will purchase it. I will pay £25, £30 for a Blu-ray. I don't purchase physical media very often now because I can't afford to do that. But it's a film I love, I will do that. But if I need to illegally watch the film, to love the film, to then purchase it, isn't that better than me just watching it once on? I mean, there's just too many streaming services.
Well, listen. So this is such a complex issue for me because unfortunately, you can find my novels in torrents. So I hate the idea of piracy, but here's the thing: there needs to be a way for creators to get paid for uncontrolled distribution. And really, there's internet service providers that are well aware of what content is being downloaded. Okay, so right now, internet service providers are basically making money off of, let's say, my work, just to make it personal, right? So really, I mean, it's like the crime is one thing, right? The person consuming the art illegally is one thing, but you also have a corporation that's profiting off of it. And I'm not as offended by the guy who perhaps wants to read one of my books, but maybe it fell in that donut hole when they were out of print. They're back now, but they were out of print. I'm kind of glad that guy got to read the book, right? What I'm not crazy about is that some internet service provider, is getting paid monthly for providing the service that allowed that to happen. So I think there needs to be a way for the service providers to.
Sorry. Just want to say, when it comes to novels, I do buy.
Look at that.
Yeah, I do. I do not. When it comes to books, I do always pay. It's, for me, movies are different because it's. I don't know. It's just when it comes to novels, I always buy. I don't care. I will always buy a novel. But when it comes to movies, I think when it's movies, because there's so many to watch and people are constantly recommending films to watch. Watch this, watch this. Novels take more investment. So I'm not just why would I just illegally download a book when I can, if I'm going to invest 10 hours of my life into something, I'm just gonna buy the book. I'm
Well,
not gonna illegally stream it.
I shouldn't even say this much because it's a temptation, but so I mean, what's really absurd is that the torrent that you can find my novel Lifeless on is titled something like, is named something like it's 200 zombie novels, and I'm like, seriously, who's reading 200 zombie novels that you need to have right now? Like, that's just compulsion to possess at that point. It's like the thrill of getting something illegal. But my thing is really, I think that we got to stop trying to, I don't know, vilify people for wanting books and movies and music. But what we have to do is find a way that the creators can get paid for that. So to my mind, a service provider is providing the conduit. Somehow that 0.7% of a cent or whatever it is needs to come back to the creator. And with technology as it is, that should be possible. We've done far harder things. I mean, if we can send booster rockets up that now can come back and land on the pad to be reused, we can do this, right?
Yeah.
So I think too about film though, one of the reasons we have a comfort in watching something illegally, like I don't do torrents or anything, but I have no problem if something's on YouTube and I'm pretty sure they don't have any right to put it up, I will watch it. And
Well,
I think that comfort comes from the fact that for years we watched things on television and, you know, it was out of our hands whether the station really had the right to show it or not. So we didn't even think about it. And I think that mentality is kind of just seeped into the modern world.
well, it's funny you say that. All the Colors of the Dark. I thought, oh, this is going to be a tough one to find. So obviously, I thought, well, I want to see the film. So I was like, went on Google, and the first result was YouTube. It's on YouTube, but you feel almost like less guilty about watching it. If it's on YouTube, you feel less, even though it's exactly the same principle as someone putting it on a torrent stream.
It
It's the
is.
same principle. It's no, but with it's been on YouTube, you almost feel like, well, it's YouTube, so it's okay. You know, it's like because YouTube is such a widely renowned
And, and
website.
and there you go. So YouTube do sell movies on their site, right? So
Yeah,
it is entirely capable that you especially if, so I don't know if you subscribe to the free version of YouTube for whatever, it's like $4 a month or whatever it is, so you don't have to see the ads. Because if you do, then what I'm going to say is like they're already making money off you, and if they're not, they're making it off of ad revenue. So how if they know something's up illegally, there has to be an ASCAP like system that we could put in place so that whoever the right owner is, at this point is to Sergio Martino's All the Colors of the Night, they should get their half a cent off of your watch, whether you pay it or not, because someone is making money off them. You didn't make money off them, you just watched the thing. I think we need to find a way to make this happen because this whole problem can go away and creators can actually start enjoying some of the fruits of their labors.
I agree. I mean, yeah, I mean, I just with the streaming services now, I don't see how it can go on to the level it's going on. I think that there's room for them all to survive, but I don't see how you can possibly be surprised that there's illegal piracy going on when, you know, I said it before, it went earlier on in the stream. When it comes to music, the big streaming services, they cover like 99% of all music released. So if you all the main, unless you're into some like really sort of random, you know, real deep cuts, if you subscribe to Spotify, most of the other big streaming services are going to have what you're interested in. When it comes to movies, there's just not a chance. You know, you've got to subscribe to one for that, and another thing with music streaming services is they don't take random artists off every month and then replace them with someone else. They're there 24/7. With Netflix and Amazon Prime and Shudder, a movie will be on there for a month and then it's gone. Back on 6 months later. And just before I finish, physical media in its decline, where does that leave us? Because physical media, I've said on Piz's Patreon stream, the online maybe, the hardcore collectors are still getting this stuff, but in the normies in the supermarkets like Walmart and over here, it's getting eaten up. The space on the shop floor is getting eaten up by clothes and groceries. People are not buying Blu-rays and DVDs in store anymore. So where does that leave? It's sad times, but
well, I mean, in a way, I feel like we're all just old and we don't get it. Listen, as long as the movies are available, ultimately, I will be happy. The problem becomes we're going backwards in availability in many ways. I worry. I know you're not, but I'm a huge fan of the 1930s horror films. Now, I own almost everything released during the decade, so I'm pretty good now. But I do worry like that. What's the next people like me that would discover the decade and it clicks with them? How are they going to discover it if they don't have physical media? Because the interest in the streaming services of making something available from The Lady Vanishes or The Spiral Staircase from the 40s, this stuff is not exactly sexy for them to put on their service, right? So I worry about older films. I worry about foreign films. Briefly, foreign films can be available in a domestic market, but then after a while, they get removed to make room for something else. Because niche markets are going to be definitely harder to maintain for streamers. So it's like I love owning movies because I love being able to just pull them out and watch them. But I'm also the guy who will tell you that I own things on DVD that I love, but I might watch it once every 5 years. So guess what? I'm not going to upgrade to Blu-ray or UHD. I'm not one of these guys that collects just to collect. I want to own the movies because I want the access to the movies. So that's where my fear is. It's the more obscure stuff. Frankly, Gremlins will always be available at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
No worries. And it'll probably look better because already the 4K stream of Gremlins is actually a better resolution than the UHD disc. Now, whether you can download it to your house, whether you have that T1 line running is a different issue, but the technology is getting to the point where it's going to surpass discs at a point. So, I don't know. Maybe we're just old. I just worry about the access.
I mean, the only issue. I mean, even with something like Gremlins, or a case in point would be something like Monster Squad from the 80s. I'd randomly choose Monster Squad. It's only because watching that film, I was never a big fan of that film growing up. I thought it was massively overrated. But I watched it again about 3 or 4 years ago, and some of the language in the film was a little bit fruity for like modern standards, and I was like, this is a sort of film where I can see if it goes to streaming services, they're going to be like making a few edits, We're sitting and like thinking, well, no, I want to see the unedited version of. I don't, it's a film I never purchased because I was never the biggest fan, but I still want to see the unedited director's version of this film, and they probably haven't edited the film, but watching it, I was thinking, well, it's part of this film that I can see be upsetting to some people nowadays, and obviously, we've seen how the way it's gone with The Simpsons, and God only knows what they'll do to South Park in the future if it goes to streaming. They'll probably cut that to ribbons, but that's just massively troublesome, going forward, because God only knows what they're going to do to some of these films. If they're completely, in the hands of the censors on Netflix or Amazon Prime, how are they? What are they? They're just going to butcher some of these old TV shows and films.
So watch what I'm going to do here. It's really clever, right? So the censorship issue is obviously the third rail for me. Like, I never support censorship, ever. If there's a document of a crime being committed, that's a little bit different because a crime was committed to create it. But other than that, I believe free speech will always be the best answer. And it's also, by the way, the only moral answer. Because once you say this person shouldn't be able to say or depict this, someone else can say the same for you. So the only moral way to be consistent is to support speech, period. But here's the thing, like, we fought long and hard to get uncut versions of a lot of movies. In the 80s, we didn't. Like the version of Tenebrae, to bring it back, right, that I saw originally was called Unsane, and it was on VHS. It was not just pan and scan, it was overly cropped to the point where you could very rarely tell what was going on. I'm sorry to do this, but I have to bow out for just a second. I'll be right back.
Fine. Okay. Oh, that lawn leaves us hanging. And I've got nothing to say. What can I talk about for a couple of seconds while Lorne is doing what he's doing? Someone make a comment in the chat, please. Come on, someone say something. Thank you, Anthony. You know what? It's funny you should say that. Okay, he's back. He's back.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It was a call from work. It's a call from work. So we fought really hard to get uncut versions of films like Tenebrae. It was pan and scanned. It was overly cropped. All the gore was cut out of it, and actually scenes were actually, the print that they used was so bad, in such bad shape, that there was actually like damage that you could not make out entire scenes. And like many of the VHS releases, it was overly dark. So we're kind of going backwards. If they're going to censor films for different reasons today, we're giving up all that progress we made in the 90s, because throughout the 80s the censorship was still in place inside the genre. So I just think it would be a damn shame to go backwards. Doesn't mean I agree with everything, but I will tell you, like, people who to bring up Cannibal Holocaust again, people who watch the cruelty version, with a free version of Cannibal Holocaust, I don't understand. Because why are you landing on that doorstep to begin with, unless you want the full horrible, nasty version of it? Watch something else. I frankly do not support any censored versions of pretty much anything.
And on that note, I will wrap things up in about 5 to 10 minutes, but quite conveniently, and this is very relevant to you, Lorne, because I was actually going to ask you this question before we went. Anthony says, I have a huge collection of, I've just cut off the comment. I have a huge collection of Hammer horror films because I worry they might vanish one day. And I actually, obviously when I've not exhausted maybe the giallo films, I'm just going to dip into them. But I also want to dip into some of the Hammer films of the 60s. I mean, I don't even know when did the Hammer films, basically my question is, essential Hammer films, where do you start, where the go-to films? But I don't even know, did they begin in the 50s? And then are all Hammer films British?
Yes.
Or were they?
Well, okay, you're going to split hairs there, because some were made in Ireland, but
well, I don't care. I'll just
okay. Yes, they're all part of the Union. Most people would answer Horror of Dracula simply because it's the film that really started their entire neo-goth wave. I don't know that there's a wrong way to start watching Hammer films. I always say that my favorite Hammer films are the Karnstein trilogy, which is, Vampire Lovers, Lust for a Vampire, and Twins of Evil. I think Twins of Evil is the best thing the studio ever produced.
I think I may have seen that film. a long time ago. I've seen a couple of. I think I vaguely remember watching some old Hammer films way back in the early 90s, but at the time I wasn't even aware that they were Hammer films. But I just remember them being like late 60s, early 70s, and
Yep. Well, this is the Karnstein trilogy is, I think, 69, 71, and 73. So yeah, but I mean, you can't go wrong with The Devil a Daughter. You can't go wrong with The Reptile. Obviously, the Frankenstein series is preferable to the Dracula series as a whole. There's so many good films in that series. So, I mean, there's a lot of easy places to go. What I'd avoid is, I know this is going to piss someone off out there when I say it, avoid the television show. The Hammer House of Horrors was trash. It's just, it's not up to the pedigree of the films. And be careful. I mean, not everything is completely golden, but there's a lot of great stuff there. My suggestion to you is, obviously do whatever you want to do, but don't just relegate yourself just to Hammer, though. Take that entire time period into account, because there are indie productions out of England that are really worth it. And there's also Amicus is the other big studio that produced some great work. Everyone knows the anthologies that Robert Bloch wrote for them, but don't limit yourself. For my money, the 60s in horror was just ruled by Britain or the United Kingdom. Everyone wants to point out, Night of the Living Dead barely squeaks in, and certainly Psycho began the decade. But to be honest with you, the entire center of the decade, the Brits were doing all the hard work in the genre, and probably don't get the distinction or praise that they deserve from modern fans, but they should.
So. I still need to see Peep and Tom. I've never. Still need to see Peep and
Tom.
Oh,
it's a great film. It's a great film.
People.
Do you like? Do you like John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness?
Yeah.
If you're a fan of that, check out the Quatermass films from Hammer, which Carpenter was not so subtly kind of riffing on.
Yeah, the Quatermass. The guy, I mean, I remember like there was a movie called a TV movie called The Stone Tape. The Stone Tapes. Yeah. Nigel Neal. Yeah, I actually recommended it for Piz. He actually reviewed it when I was part of his movie review club, because I saw that purely by accident. It was because it was connected to, he was involved. Nigel Neal was in some way involved in Ghostwatch, and he wrote, I think, either wrote or directed the Stone Tapes.
Yeah.
But he was involved in Quatermass as well,
but he would go on to write the original screenplay before it was redrafted after him of Halloween 3.
Yes, yeah, he did. Yeah. But the Quatermass, it started off as like was it a radio play originally, and then went to TV, or
it was a novel?
A novel.
And then
it was also on radio as well.
Yeah.
Or
and that it got turned into a series of novels and comic books, and then eventually it became a film for television by Hammer, and then the second film was purely for theatrical. I think that's all right.
What did it also a TV show as well, or I thought the BBC
there was a single series TV show later than the films. I think like 5 years after the films. So
I'm just wondering how easily to access these would be. Like
Anchor Bay released. I don't know the television show, but they released both the films on DVD. So those.
I know some of the. I'm sure some of the early Quatermass episodes were, because I'm sure there's like Doctor Who episodes which have been destroyed completely, and I think it's the same with Quatermass. Back in the early some stuff for the early 60s in the BBC archives. I think there was like a fire or something at some point, and I think the stuff that they made that's just gone forever, which is just like tragic, but it really is, because I mean the BBC's archives must be vast, and for all the shit I give the BBC, because they are like a pretty garbage organisation these days, they have created some of the most amazing. I mean, anything with David Attenborough, it's the most amazing TV you've ever seen. But they do. I mean, yeah, it's sad to say a lot. I think there was a certain amount of stuff from like the late 50s, early 60s, which was destroyed in a fire of some sort, which is just, yeah, it's tragic. But I'm sure the Quatermass, some of the stuff that is their very early episodes for TV were destroyed.
Wow.
But I could be wrong. But
well, listen, stuff gets rediscovered all the time. There was a registry. I don't remember what it was called. I should look it up. But there's a registry of lost films that was created like in 2000 or something. And it's funny because there's like it was like 700 known titles of lot films that are just completely lost, and like seriously, like 80 of them have been found since then. So sometimes it's just a matter of awareness. People don't realize that things that they have in their collections are actually considered lost.
yeah.
So I mean, fingers crossed that someday we'll all be able to be disappointed by London After Midnight. So, by all accounts, it was not good, but it is so legendary that we all want to see it.
Jamie says hello. But on that note, Jamie, sorry, I'm going to have to say goodbye because it is 1:45 in the UK and I work in the morning. So, but Lorne, thanks for jumping on. Always a pleasure. I'll probably see any word on a new duel or.
I'm working on the programming for the coming month. I was literally the reason I needed a few extra months before I jumped on here, as I was chatting with someone about a show. But we have some exciting stuff coming up. We'll definitely will get back to the dual concept. I just between work and some other obligations, it's been tight.
I understand. It's work comes first, and this is a hobby after all. So certainly for me, it is anyway.
Got to pay for healthcare somehow.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about that. It's free for me. Although it's not perfect. That's for sure. Anyway, thanks for jumping on, man.
No problem.
I'll probably see you in Piz's next Patreon stream and on the Twitterverse as well. For everyone who jumped on, thanks a lot. I will see you next week, probably. Bye.